Hello and welcome. I am Ramesh Ramachandran and you're watching a special broadcast here on DD India. And with me is a very special guest, Ambassador T.S Tirumurti, India's permanent representative to the United Nations in New York. Now, Ambassador Tirumurti is a former Indian envoy to Malaysia. He served as Secretary Economic Relations in the Indian Foreign Ministry in New Delhi. He has a distinction of being the first representative of India to the Palestinian National Authority. He served as Joint Secretary in the Indian Foreign Ministry looking after the Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Myanmar desk as well as the United Nations Economic and Social Desk as well. And he's an accomplished author. Now viewers, you would recall that India holds the rotating presidency of the UN Security Council for the month of August. Remember, India became a non-permanent member on the UN Security Council in the month of January 2021. Its term will end on 31st December 2022, the year India turns 75. Now, it's the 8th time India is on the UN Security Council. Now, before we proceed any further, here's a short video of India's presidency for the month of August, which lays out India's vision and guiding principles. Take a look.
संयुक्त राष्ट्र जिन आदर्शों के साथ स्थापित हुआ था और भारत की मूल दार्शनिक सोच बहुत मिलती जुलती है, अलग नहीं है। संयुक्त राष्ट्र के इसी हॉल में ये शब्द अनेकों बार गूंजा है, वसुधैव कुटुंबकम। हम पूरे विश्व को एक परिवार मानते हैं। ये हमारी संस्कृति, संस्कार और सोच का हिस्सा है।
The real challenges facing the world are those that are truly indivisible and transcend national boundaries. They include terrorism, pandemics, and climate change. India will keep the international spotlight firmly focused on the task of combating them.
India's call for reform multilateralism lies the reform of the UN Security Council. Reflective of the contemporary realities of today, the Council must be made more representative of developing countries if it is to continue to engender trust and confidence in the ability to provide leadership to the entire world. During our 8 terms as a member of the Security Council, we have always endeavored to be a voice of reason and understanding, a voice of the underrepresented developing world, a bridge builder for narrowing divides and for fostering consensus.
We must create systems that addresses the problems of today and challenges of tomorrow. And we must think of the entire humanity and not merely of those who are on our side of the borders. Humanity as a whole must be at the center of our thinking and action.
Let me now take you inside the United Nations Security Council chamber. Take a look at the famed horseshoe table around which India, led by Ambassador T.S Tirumurti, will be seated along with the other UNSC members.
Friends, India has just assumed the presidency of the United Nations Security Council on the 1st of August. It is indeed an important moment for India and for all of us in the permanent mission of India to the United Nations. I would like to thank France for presiding over the Council in July. In particular, my dear friend and colleague, His Excellency Ambassador de Rivière, Permanent Representative of France to the United Nations, who has successfully steered the French presidency through the month. Given his vast experience and insight into the working of the United Nations, especially the Security Council, Ambassador Nicolas and his team have set very high standards for others to emulate. India and France enjoy historical and close relations, and I would like to thank France for all the support which they have given us during our stint in the Security Council. During our presidency in August, India is organizing 3 high-level signature meetings focusing on our priority areas, that is, maritime security, peacekeeping, and counter-terrorism. India will also be organizing a solemn event in the memory of peacekeepers. The Security Council will also have on its agenda several important meetings, including Syria, Iraq, Somalia, Yemen, and the Middle East. The Security Council will also be adopting important resolutions on Somalia, Mali, and the UN interim force in Lebanon. I'm confident that India's presidency will contribute to strengthen international peace and security further.
All right, time for a very short break. When we come back, we will continue this conversation with Ambassador Tirumurti. Keep watching DD India. Don't go anywhere.
With the world's largest COVID vaccination drive, India is leading the way. As the vaccine reaches every corner of the nation, do not forget the mantra, Dawai bhi, Kadai bhi. Let's continue our fight against COVID-19. Vaccination along with social distancing, sanitization and masks.
Mask up, India!
Put your mask on and cover your nose and be safe.
Mask up, India.
Welcome back. You're watching a special broadcast here on DD India, and with me is my very special guest, Ambassador T.S Tirumurti, India's permanent representative to the United Nations in New York. Ambassador Tirumurti, welcome to DD India. Good to have you on the show. Now, first up, how have the first few days of India's presidency been shaping up? What are your impressions of week 1?
I think predictably, week 1 has been hectic. Normally, the presidency starts on the first working day of the month with a customary breakfast, which is hosted by the President of the Security Council to all the other Security Council members. Then, subsequently, the program of work is decided, after which there is a full-fledged media briefing. In addition, this time, we also adopted a presidential statement on the drawdown of this UNAMID, which is the UN mission in Darfur. So this we adopted on the first day itself, even though normally no business is transacted other than adopting the program of work. Then in the afternoon on the same day, we also had a customary briefing of all the members of the UN. And I'm very happy that our signature events and the program of work has received very strong support from the members of the Security Council and outside. Then we also had a briefing and discussion on Syria relating to chemical weapons on Wednesday. A meeting of the troop contributing countries of this UNIFIL, which is the UN interim force in Lebanon, is also scheduled for Friday, since the issue of renewing the mandate of UNIFIL will be coming up later in the month. So I think overall, it has been a hectic, but a very productive week for the Security Council.
And getting into the specifics now, Ambassador, what are some of India's priorities or signature events in the month of August?
There are 3 major areas which we will focus on in August. Maritime security, peacekeeping, and counter-terrorism. And we will focus on these three themes through three signature events during our presidency. Maritime security has always, as you know, received a very high priority in our foreign policy. We believe that it is time for the Security Council to take a holistic approach to the issue of maritime security. That also safeguards common prosperity and other security interests. So while the security has passed resolutions before, on some aspects of maritime security and particularly maritime crime, we think that it is time that these are brought together and discussed in a holistic manner. And this is the first time that this topic of maritime security is being discussed as a concept in the Security Council. So I think that's another first, actually. Right. And we expect high-level participation from council members and a very robust discussion. The second issue or topic which we'll take up is peacekeeping. And we chose this topic, I think, inevitably, given our own pioneering involvement in peacekeeping. The peacekeepers, of course, function in volatile situations to enforce the mandate of the Security Council. It is therefore crucial to ensure that their safety and their security are given the highest importance. And we will be focusing on how to ensure the safety of peacekeepers, especially by using better technology, and how to bring perpetrators of crime against peacekeepers to justice. And we are strongly advocating for proactive measures to protect the protectors. We are also in discussion with other members of the council to see if we could agree on a text or a resolution that will address the issue of impunity for crimes against peacekeepers and bring in accountability. So that is something we are working on with the other members of the Security Council. Of course, you know that counter-terrorism is a major national priority for us, and we have been firmly against terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. So our choosing this topic is actually both timely and extremely relevant in the current context. So these are broadly the major signature events, so to say, of our presidency.
Ambassador Tirumurti, what does the calendar of activities look like in the month of August? Are certain other meetings or discussions planned?
The provisional program of work, which when we start, giving it to the council and then it is adopted. And the month of August, if you see the program of work, and it's available on the UN website. So I won't go through it in that great detail, but broadly speaking, there are several mandated meetings which are scheduled for the month. These meetings are the Syrian chemical weapons file, which we discussed on Wednesday already. Then the Syrian political and humanitarian aspect, UNIFIL, as I mentioned, UN Interim Force in Lebanon, Somalia, we'll have Yemen, Iraq, and the Middle East, the Israel-Palestine issue. And these are all monthly meetings which are scheduled. So this will happen. Besides that, as you would have noticed, we also adopted a presidential statement, as I just mentioned, on the drawdown of UNAMID in Darfur on the 2nd of August. We have also scheduled during the month adoption of mandate renewals. These keep coming up. It's a cycle. One is UNIFIL on Lebanon. Another is UNSOM, which is on Somalia. And the Mali sanctions also will come up for renewal. There may be another resolution, for example, increasing the ceiling of the strength of the UN peacekeeping in MINUSMA is in Mali. And also we have kept adequate gaps in the schedule so as to allow for contingencies that may arise during the month and where the council will be called upon to play its role. So this is the overall thing on the other meetings.
Right. Ambassador Tirumurti, India joined the UNSC on the 1st of January. So between then and now, what has been India's contributions within the United Nations Security Council?
Let me put it this way, that, a country of the size of India into the Security Council, and especially with an independent foreign policy, we are bound to have an impact on the Security Council deliberations. And I believe that in these 7 months, our contribution has been fairly significant. Because, I think we have not hesitated to take principled and progressive positions on a wide variety of issues. And I think our presence has also had, if I may use the word, salutary effect on the P5. And in the case of issues in India's immediate neighborhood, for example, Afghanistan, Myanmar,
Right.
and we have stepped in to ensure that the Council's discussions and outcomes are focused, they're forward-looking, they're also sensitive to the situation on the ground. If you look at Africa, we have been sensitive to the needs and priorities of the African country. And this is directly in line with the Prime Minister's 10 guiding principles for Africa. And we have also leveraged our very strong and historical links in the Middle East and conveyed our considered views on a range of issues relating to Palestine, Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, and also Iraq, which is just coming up this month. And in addition, you are aware that we have also taken on the responsibilities of steering two important sanctions committees. I also chair the Taliban Sanctions Committee and the Libya Sanctions Committee, where I think we have seen fairly swift developments in both the files, in fact, and that was a bit of a coincidence. And on the issues of our national priority, like terrorism, peacekeeping, which we have just mentioned, we have been extremely proactive and we have been focused. So that's broadly how I would like to assess my first 7 months.
Right. Let me request you to dwell a bit, if you will, on the issue of peacekeeping in particular. Now, India is the largest troop contributor. Would India consider, for instance, pledging more troops going forward? Also, on the issue of protecting the protector, you spoke about how technology can be put to use. So, could you throw some light on those aspects? Also, assistance during COVID-19.
No, I think as I mentioned earlier, we have been associated with peacekeeping for a very long time. And, as you know very well, that we are really proud of a very long and a rich tradition of contributing to UN peacekeeping operations, particularly the involvement of women peacekeepers. Because as you would recall, the first ever UN, peacekeeping contingent, a woman UN peacekeeping contingent, was from India, and it was to Liberia. And so far, we have contributed more than 250,000 troops in nearly 50 missions, over the years, cumulatively the largest from any country. And India always, of course, remembers the valor, the bravery of the 175 Indian peacekeepers who have laid down their lives across various missions for the cause of peace. At the peak of the COVID pandemic, as you have pointed out, in response to the request of the Secretary General, we actually upgraded two of our peacekeeping hospitals. One was in Juba, which is in South Sudan. The other was in Goma, Democratic Republic of the Congo. And we also gifted vaccine doses to cover peacekeepers across all the UN peacekeeping missions. And we have also pledged air support now to MINUSMA. MINUSMA is the one in Mali. And we are also, therefore, working with the UN Secretariat to deploy them at the very earliest. So I think overall, I can certainly say that our contribution to peacekeeping has been second to none.
Absolutely. Mr. Tirumurti, the other issue confronting India and the world is the larger issue of UN reform. Now, it's a two-part question. One on UN reform in general, which could involve agencies such as the WHO or the issue of refugees, for instance, or migration. The other issue in particular, the UNSC reform, which India is pushing for. What is the state of play or the status of negotiations, particularly text-based negotiations in the last several months? And also the role played by the G4 countries to push for UNSC reform in particular.
No, I think this is something which is extremely important for us. And you've raised a very important question. It has been, of course, 75 years since the UN was founded. But its decision-making structures remain still stuck in 1945. And they obviously do not reflect the world as it stands today. I mean, this is as clear as daylight. And this is seriously eroding the legitimacy and the credibility of the UN. particularly the UN Security Council. Since the UN has not been reflective of the current day realities, other groupings have started taking on the mandate of shaping the world. And that is what is exactly happening. For example, you've seen in G10, you've seen BRICS when it came up nearly 15 years ago, the reason why it came up. So I think, unfortunately, those who are stopping the reforms process in the UN security, the UN, they seem to be completely oblivious to this fact. And it has been 16 years since the World Summit document calling for early reform was adopted. And the world has changed drastically in these 15, 16 years. But sadly, the UN is still stuck in the same place, which is in 1945. So this is in the face of the fact that overwhelming majority of the UN member states, they firmly support the comprehensive reform of the Security Council. So an expansion of the Security Council, both in the permanent and the non-permanent categories, is now indispensable to make this body more representative, more legitimate, and more effective. So I think an immediate and time-bound text negotiations is absolutely necessary. A transparent and inclusive and a result-oriented process is absolutely essential if you have to move decisively towards a concrete outcome. But regrettably, that there are countries that are paying lip service to multilateralism, but they actually, they are also projecting themselves as the protectors of the UN Charter. But the IGN process, which is the process where we actually discuss the UN Security Council reform, can no longer be used as a smokescreen by them. And we really hope to push the process in the right direction.
Just a follow-up question, Ambassador Tirumurti. Could the UN envisage a process whereby this becomes a time-bound process? Is that possible? Number one. And number two, very quickly, you spoke about increasing the number of permanent and non-permanent members as part of the reform. Is there any consensus on how many would be there in each category? And also, what is India's position or the general consensus within the UNSC on veto?
Yeah, let me put it this way. There's no consensus on the veto. So, that I can answer you very clearly. But the point is that this is exactly what we are looking at, that the IGN process, which was set up, was designed to have a time-bound type of advancement towards the goal of reform. Now, this is exactly the process which is now being abused, because what we are trying to do is that we are trying to have a consensus. Now, if there are a group of people who don't want this consensus to develop, then you don't have any reform. You don't have a time-bound schedule. So this is precisely what we are looking at overcoming. And in the last IGN meeting, which we had, many countries, we have several groupings, as you know. We have the G4, we have the L69, which is a group of several developing countries, numerous developing countries rather. So we pushed for a very time-bound type of thing. And we are hoping that when it resumes now, we will at least have a very focused discussion on, as I said, a text which we can all discuss. And we are also trying to bring some semblance of, order into the whole thing. And we do want both permanent and the non-permanent side, both being, there are several numbers being discussed. Let me be frank. There are also people who feel that it should be only in the non-permanent side and not in the permanent side. So this is something which is being subject to debate.
All right. On that note, Ambassador Tirumurti, thank you so much for making time for us here at DD India and sharing your thoughts, your insights with our viewers at home and abroad. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm very happy to meet you again, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, it's a wrap, but news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.